By day, he's a mild-mannered attorney. By night, he's an even more mild-mannered, middle-aged suburban dad. By weekend, still mild-mannered. Mark, this is dumb. Why do you have me reading this?
Come on, man, just read it. I told you, this is the dramatic intro for my podcast. It's important.
Why do you have me doing it? We're not even that good of friends.
Well, you've got that voice for it. You can bring that gravitas that I'm looking for. Besides, I think this could really be a big opportunity for you. I mean, maybe you'll get discovered. Anyway, would you please just do this already?
Yeah, fine. But once a month.
Well, it might be twice a month.
Huh?
Well, we're still working it out. We're just starting up. It might be twice a month. But anyway, go ahead. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, whatever. Nobody's going to listen to this anyway.
All right, will you please just read what's on the paper? You're killing me here.
Okay. But once a month, when the moon reaches its highest point in the sky and the wild creatures call out in the night, he emerges from a private sanctuary in an undisclosed location outside of Little Rock, Arkansas, arrayed in his priestly vestments, carrying forth the good news that comic books and graphic novels aren't just for kids, that they aren't just masked and spandex superheroes, that storytelling in a graphic format can be so much more. He is the graphic novel apostle.
Intense. That was killer, right?
Yeah, whatever, man. You said Natalie made some pie?
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of the Graphic Novel Apostle podcast. My name is Mark Ohrenberger. I'm going to be your graphic novel apostle, and to give you just a sense of what that is, I find myself at this place in life where I am deeply invested and just ceaselessly excited about reading comic books and graphic novels, and yet I don't really have any friends in my life who share this hobby. My wife is very patient and listens to me talk about these stories that I know she does not care about one bit. But I think that there's a lot in this medium that people could really enjoy and maybe just don't realize that is there. And I feel like I've got a message that I need to share with the world. I'm going to be the apostle or the ambassador for graphic novels here on this podcast. And so each episode, I will have picked out a book for one of my friends to read and sit down and talk through with me. And it's a story that I'll have picked for them of some kind of different genre that maybe suits something in their taste. A lot of people hear comic books or graphic novels and they think of Superman and Batman and Captain America, and those are wonderful. There will be times where we talk about superhero stories on this show. There are some that I love incredibly. But I also want people to understand that some of the best storytelling that goes on using this graphic format is outside of that and is all kinds of different genre storytelling. Everything from crime stories, crime noir and hard-boiled detective-type tales, horror stories. Sometimes we get really cool adaptations of classic literature, mysteries, adventure. Today on the podcast, we're going to do what I'll call a bumbling spy comedy, a farce story. Sometimes you get just these slices of life or westerns, and I want to share these types of stories with my friends. And so each episode will have a friend of mine who does not read comics or graphic novels on and see what they think of this type of storytelling. Now, I want to lay this out here for you at the very beginning. When we go through these stories, we're going to talk about every bit of them. So this is your spoiler warning. If there is a twist or a big reveal in the story, you're probably going to hear about it here on the podcast. And so we'll try to tell you ahead of time what the stories are. If you don't want to be spoiled with any of that stuff, man, just go ahead and pause and come on back when you're ready. Or if you don't want to read the book and you still don't want to be spoiled, I'm sorry, this may not be the place for you. But I hope you'll stick around anyway. I also want to get some feedback from you guys. These first few episodes that we'll be putting out, we're experimenting with the format a little bit. I want to hear your thoughts not only on these stories, but also with what these conversations are like. Whether you want more of the story, probably not going to be the case. Whether you want less of the story or less detail or something that we're doing, just let me know. The way you can reach us is first by email at graphicnovelapostle@gmail.com or on Instagram at graphicnovelapostle. And I'm looking forward to connecting with all of you guys. I'll go ahead and tell you now that for our next episode, we're going to have my friend Peyton on, and we're going to review Criminal, Volume 1, which is called Coward, by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. As this is our first episode, there are also a couple of thank yous that I just want to give to people who helped us get this off the ground. First of all, I've got sitting right here to my right my friend Travell McManus. Travell has really just spelled out for me exactly what equipment I needed so that we'd be able to do this podcast. He is showing me what types of software we need to use and is going to be teaching me how to edit it. And I am so thankful for his help along the way. And Travell is also going to be a guest on the show. You may hear him jump in from time to time. In fact, Travell, you want to say hello to our friends?
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Travell. Next, I also want to say thanks to our friend Mike Spigner, who designed the graphic novel Apostle logo that you have seen when you loaded up this podcast. Mike and I had a lot of fun going back and forth with different ideas for what this would look like, and I really enjoy his cartooning, and thank you to Mike for that. And then finally, I want to say a special thanks to my wife, Natalie Ohrenberger. Natalie has no interest here in what I'm doing. I think she'll listen probably, at least sometimes. But what Natalie does have is just an endless capacity to tolerate the type of nonsense that you're going to get living with me. Also, her credit card. That has been an important part of getting us off the ground. So, Natalie, thank you for that. Maybe you didn't hear this. Finally, I want to introduce you to somebody who, from time to time, will pop in on the podcast and will certainly be a frequent topic of conversation because I guess most of my life revolves around him these days. And that is my son, Aaron Ohrenberger, age 9. Now, those of you who know me in real life will know his name is not Aaron. For some reason that is mysterious still to me, he wanted to be known by a fake name on this podcast, and he also wants you to know that Aaron is spelled with one A.
Hi.
Hey, Aaron. Thank you for being around today. We are looking forward to having you as a guest on the show and your contributions from time to time.
You're welcome.
And next, I want to introduce our very first guest. This is my friend, Mr. Chad Tappe. Chad, how are you this morning?
I'm great this morning. This is so fun.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. Chad, I got to tell you, people who listen to multiple episodes of this podcast, I'm hoping there are many. They won't just do one. We'll probably hear a lot about a Wednesday lunch group where a lot of our mutual friends get together. We have a text thread with about 20 guys on it, and it's a drop in, whoever can make it on any given day. And given your work schedule, when it's not the summertime, we don't get as often to have your company.
I do not get to come as often as I would like, yeah.
Well, and I wish you did, but I was telling some of the other guys about this podcast idea several weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I was, introducing the idea that it's going to be as guests, my friends who don't read comics. And I already had in mind that my first guest has to be Chad Tappe, because Chad is the cruise director of life. People who know him, he is my friend who has the greatest, highest pursuit of fun. I think.
I love that.
Man, you bring
That's such a good compliment. Wow, it's so great. But I remember hearing about, so one of our friends shared this with me. Has Mark reached out to you yet? I was like, no. And Mark and I don't text just a whole lot, just one-to-one. We talk at lunches and as much as we see each other. But he said, I can't wait for Mark to text you and tell you what he's got in mind. And I would have gotten through 150 guesses and never come close to what this actually is. You're probably going to hear me giggle just all through this thing, just because I think this is so fun. Whatever this ends up being, we'll figure it out as we go.
I hope so. And one of my favorite things about that was I didn't mention to the guys at lunch when I was talking about this that I was planning to have you on as my first guest, but just said, this will be what we do with my friends who don't read comics. And that night, I'm sitting at home in the chair where I like to sit, and I'm reading a comic book like I like to do in the evenings. And my phone buzzes, and it's a text, and it's from Chad, and it just says, I don't read comics. And I was like, okay, it's on.
Yeah, I think it gave me just enough to know what this was. I was like, yeah, I'm interested. I'm intrigued. What's going on?
Fantastic. And I wanted to start with a story that is a little weird, a little off center, is the kind of thing that is just a lot of fun, but it's not your average everyday story. And so today we're going to highlight the book Spy Superb by Matt Kindt. Wrote and drew this book, and then his wife Sharlene Kindt did all the coloring on it. And, for a lot of these different episodes, I'm going to want to feature really outstanding art. And That is not this. I don't mean to say that it's bad art in any way. I think it's very fun and it's very fitting, but he has a style that you look at it and you go, it's maybe I could do that. But then you look at it a little further and you go, no, there's really a craft here to it. It's just a style.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Oh, that kind of reminded me a little bit of maybe what you'd see in comic strips in a Sunday newspaper or something like that as style.
I don't even have much to compare it to, Mar. Maybe that's the reason why these things are going to be so neat, just because I feel like my opinion is worth so little in this genre. You start off by saying that this is not this, and I was like, oh, I thought it was really great. I thought the art, I have nothing to compare it to. I don't know. I was taking some notes while I was going through it or whatever, and I did even try my hand at drawing one of the characters. There was one of the first stills of the character that he's introduced there, and I was like, I bet I could draw that. And so even through my notes, made just little scribbles of little things that kind of went there because I thought the style was neat.
And I love that. I'm sitting here across the table from you, and I'm looking at this sketch on your iPad of a bust sketch. You get the head and shoulders of the spy superb himself.
That's right. J. Bartholomew III is this guy's name. Yeah.
Chad, will you allow us to do a screenshot of that and put it up on our Instagram?
Now that I know that you also think that maybe it's not so great, the art isn't so great, then I'm happy to compare what I did to that.
And if Matt Kindt ever listens to this, please know
yeah, that's right.
This is not
no offense.
No, by no means. It is perfect for what the story is. And we'll have some screenshots on our Instagram page as well that will just give some examples of some of the art and what it looks like. Let me give you just a little bit of background for this book, and then we're going to go through and just talk about it story beat by story beat.
Cool.
And being concise has never been a great skill of mine. Being detailed is.
Okay.
Once we're doing this, and Chad, I'll start talking through it, and I hope you'll just jump in, interrupt me, and say whatever you think about this. But this is, as I said a few minutes ago, a bumbling spy comedy about a secret agent who doesn't know that he's a secret agent. But then he decides that he is a secret agent, and he tries to take on this role, and eventually learns that, in fact, he is. One of the other things I want to do is explain to some of my friends bits about the comic book industry and how it works. There are what are called the solicits that the various publishers will put out, usually 3 months in advance of when a comic book hits the shelves. And this gives a little sample of the art, a brief summary of the story itself, so that both comic book fans can talk to their comic shops about, hey, you need to order a copy of this book for me, which is what I did when Spy Superb was getting ready to come out on shelves, but also so comic retailers will know, oh yeah, this looks like one that I think our people who come into this shop will want, and we'll order more copies of it.
Now, help me with what we have on our table right now. We have two separate things, right? So what you gave me as a way of getting into this comic book is a book, a bound book of what ends up being, I guess, 3 comic books, or what I don't know what the terms I'm using are. You've got in front of you 3 standalone.
I'm so glad you asked that question, because when I started telling people the name of this podcast, The Graphic Novel Apostle, one of the questions that I got from folks was, yeah, what is the difference between a comic book and a graphic novel?
I think I've written it down on my notes. What is these differences of these?
And I'll tell you, when I first started getting into comic books, I would go to the library to read stories. I was like, I was thinking to myself, I'm a grown man. I'm not going to spend a lot of money on comic books.
Yep.
Thousands of dollars later, the library strategy didn't work out as well as I hoped, although I do still rely on it quite a bit. But when I went and looked at the things on the shelves at the library, I thought, I don't think some of these things that are just standalone books are what I want. In my mind, I was like, those don't count. I want the ones that are collections of comics. And it can be either. And what I have in front of me are the 3 issues of this series published by Dark Horse Comics on their Flux House imprint, which is really Matt Kindt's imprint for the comics that he creates and then publishes through Dark Horse. And usually a standard comic book length, like if you go to Marvel or DC and you pick up a regular issue of a comic, it's likely going to be 20 to 22 pages, somewhere in there.
Okay.
These are about 50 pages each. And so they were a few dollars extra coming out individually, but they came out monthly, beginning in January of 2023. And then after they had all been published, they were then collected into this hardcover that you have sitting in front of you, which people will commonly refer to as a graphic novel or a trade. typically they're often called trade. Usually they come out first in softcover. I suppose it could be either. But they're trade paperbacks, or TPBs, are what you hear referred to. But then the other thing, and we'll do some of these on different episodes, where you can have a book that just comes out as a book, 150 pages, 200 pages, and never went to individual issues. And those are called OGNs, or original graphic novels. And by the way, they both count. That was a misperception I had at the beginning.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if you want to mention just like the cover of these. I thought that was one of the first things when you first gave me this book, and I immediately thought this is going to be right up my alley. It's just clever. So you've got like the binding of the book is like a grocery sack kind of thing, right?
And we remember in school as kids doing this. I assume you guys did
Absolutely
too,
right? You cover your books with old grocery sacks, so the brown paper bags. And each of the 3 books is a different kind of branded one. And so you've got Spy Superb, and then in writing on the cover, Spy Superb is and then you've got down at the binding, Trader. Spy Superb is a trader, as in Trader Joe's.
Yeah, and it looks like the font that Trader Joe's use on their bags, which was also true. I remember doing those, actually getting quite a bit of joy as a kid in getting that paper sack and cutting it up and
For sure.
putting it on my school textbook. And sometimes you would have the grocery store's logo on the outside, and sometimes not. Right. But then you would definitely draw
all over the place. That's exactly right.
100%. And in the individual comics, and I guess did they show up in the hardcover edition that you read where it showed the individual covers?
Yeah, they do. It's basically like the next chapter. So when I would go to the next comic book, it would have the next cover. So you'd have Spy Superb is not safe, as in Safeway, and then Spy Superb, but at what cost, as in Costco. Exactly. Really clever.
Super creative. And then once you turn that, there is what would be a standard cover underneath that's got the Spy Superb script and the trade dress and a more careful drawing. But I did love that cover. Let me read that solicit. I was starting to mention that a few minutes ago. So this is what the publisher put out when they were trying to sell this book to the buying public. John Wick meets Wes Anderson in this mystery thriller about a secret organization that's developed the perfect spy. Who is the perfect spy? A spy who doesn't even realize that they are a spy, a.k.a. the useful idiot. This particular useful idiot is named Jay. Jay is sent on missions without even realizing he's on a mission, until he picks up the wrong phone and the wrong secret intel, and now Russian hit squads and elite assassins are after him. Jay believes he was a sleeper agent and really is the Spy Superb. His complete obliviousness and lack of survival skills may be the only thing that saves him in this globe-trotting espionage tale, where nothing is what it seems, but also is actually what it seems. And I think that's a pretty good encapsulation of this book.
It's really good. In fact, when I opened up the book, something fell out of the book, and it's a bookmark that looks just like a grocery receipt, and that's on there. Is that what you got? Is that what one of those things would be called with the little previews?
The solicit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I didn't realize it was printed on there. I remember when I picked up the book, it had both a ribbon bookmark in it, like a church hymnal.
It does have one.
But then it also had this grocery store receipt looking document with even a barcode on the bottom.
That's right. Which throughout the book, the receipt kind of thing is a theme that comes back to in the thing a lot, which I didn't know that at the time. I thought this was an actual receipt, and then I just started reading it. No, this is the summary, the preview, like the thing on the inside of a dust jacket of an actual book.
Sure. So, Chad, when I have to tell you, I gave you this book, I guess about 2.5 weeks ago to read through, and it has been one of the hardest exercises in restraint to not ask you. Have you read it yet?
And dome of silence. We have not talked about it.
Well, what do you think? And I have been so excited to find out. So let me ask you this first. What did you think overall of this book?
So, Mark, this is what you meant when you said some of the fun. Like, I'm easy impressed, I think, on just things. If it's fun, if it's intended for fun, or if I think one of my friends thinks something is fun, I'm going to I think other of our friends that we have are going to be much more difficult to impress than me. I don't know why you started with me. I'm a low-hanging fruit that way. No, I totally enjoyed it. I have not read many graphic novels or comic books. It's not something I usually just gravitate to. I did a couple, maybe a few in college, and I was a business major, so I read a lot of Dilbert. But that doesn't, I don't think that's the same genre that we're talking about with this. But no, I did it like in 2 sittings. I went through on a Saturday, 2 different Saturday mornings, and we just got up, got my copy or whatever, and was excited to get into the world and thought it was hilarious. And you mentioned you might want to take notes. And at first I was like, why would I take notes on a comic book? And then I started like really loving doing it. Like I got into it, and man, I wrote down so many things that just jumped out at me that I knew I would forget if I didn't like mark them, and obviously didn't want to write on the book itself.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's got a special place on my trade collection shelf downstairs.
I'm sure it does, as it should.
Chad, that makes me so happy. I want for this series to pick out books specifically for, I'm going to do some curation here for our friends and people that I know that one type of thing or another. I hope I'll be able to pick out a book that suits their tastes. With this, I thought this book is just fun. Chad is a fun guy. The one exception to not asking you about your experience of this book was I texted you a couple of weeks ago about a movie, an old Bill Murray movie from, I think, 1997.
Yeah.
The Man Who Knew Too Little. And I was like, Chad, bonus points if you want to watch that movie. And I didn't know if you'd even have ever heard of it. And I was so happy with the response I got.
Yeah, that's a Tappe family favorite. I mentioned to you that I was going to tell you this story, but then you said, save it for the podcast. This is something that like we grew up watching this in our family, and my dad is a huge fan of that kind of movie. Loves Bill Murray. My dad's a preacher, and I've seen him cry so few times in my life. But the times that I do remember is watching this movie, The Man Who Knew Too Little, and The Pink Panther. The Pink Panther is my dad's like favorite film genre ever. He will just giggle, you know what I mean? So our family has so many memories of those kind of like bumbling detective just stumble on the right thing, you know what I mean? And just it's great comedy. It's good stuff.
Oh, that's wonderful. And Garrett is still sitting over here. I saw him perk up just a little bit when you said the Pink Panther. Now, I'm sure you're talking about the Peter Sellers Pink Panther.
That's correct. Yeah. We love Steve Martin, too. Steve Martin's we're a huge fan of his stuff, but definitely this is the old school, right? Inspector Clouseau thing. Really great.
100%. But Garrett has watched the Steve Martin Pink Panther 150 times.
Okay.
And there's that scene where he's learning an American accent, and he's talking about
hamburger.
I would like hamburger. You can hear that in the halls of this house all of the time. You're going to be like, Dad, why are you eating hamburger?
That's really good.
Oh, my goodness. So this book, for anyone who has seen any of those movies, falls perfectly within that genre.
Yeah.
And there are a number of ways that I think Matt Kindt used that graphic format to really make something special of that. Ways that, and I'll try to point some of these out when we go along, ways that work uniquely for the graphic format. But there's another cultural reference I just wanted to talk about now. So our spy superb, J. Bartholomew III, who we're going to meet about midway through the first issue. Every time I read this character, have you ever read the book A Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy Toole?
No.
It is one of my all-time favorite books, like very high on my all-time favorite book list. But the main character is a character named Ignatius J. Riley, who wanders through the world with this delusions of grandeur and these misperceptions for himself of why everybody else is a moron. And there's a quote from the satirist Jonathan Swift that appears at the front of that book, and it's an inscription, and it says, "When a true genius appears in the world, you may know him by this sign: the dunces are all in confederacy against him."
Yeah, right.
And that is Ignatius J. Riley, and that is J. Bartholomew III.
For sure. One of the things, I mean, I wrote, I don't know how well get into this at all, Mark, because I feel like we could just be here for a long time just talking about some of the quotes that this dude has. In fact, there's one of the things where when he's first introduced, it gives you this full picture of J. Bartholomew III with, he's got his glasses and he's got his journal that he writes little notes. If he has an idea, he's a writer, so he's wanting to write this great novel. And in the back of his pocket, in his pants, he keeps a quotation book. Right. And so throughout the whole series, he's just like dropping these jewels of out of wisdom, one of the ones he's writing this book, and he's talking to one of his friends even at this diner in the very opening kind of the book. He's telling him why he didn't know why he's not having so much success. And he says to his friend, my only fear is that its layered meanings are such that it will be overlooked in my lifetime. It's just, he thinks so highly. I'm just too deep. They just won't get it. The masses, right? He's operating on a totally different level than everyone else. And that is this Confederacy of dunces for sure.
Absolutely. In fact, so that was not the quote I thought you were going to go to in that conversation. I thought you were going to talk about when he brings up the idea that his book is going to be like Proust.
Yeah, Proust.
But better.
And his friend's like, for real? You know?
So I've actually got some of that written down here in my notes, and we'll talk about it. But let's start with the very beginning of the story, though. So once you get past this brown paper bag cover, frankly, I think you've got to have bought into the concept a little bit once you get past that cover, right? But once you get past that, we have this opening sequence where we see a man picking up a rental car. And he's driving along and he smells something funny and he gets a flat tire. So he stops on the side of the road to open the trunk to get out the spare tire, and he discovers a decomposing body that's in the trunk of the car.
Right.
And there's this conversation that, think of it as a narrative over the top if you were watching a movie, that overlays the scene. And it's an agent who is reporting about the loss of Agent Spy Superb. And so we're going to learn in just a moment, this guy's called Handler. We never get a proper name for him other than the Handler. And he's the senior agent who oversees Operation Spy Superb. And he's reporting back. They're in this bookshelf. This is a classic spy movie trope, too.
Yep.
I said bookshelf, a bookstore. And the front of it looks like a plain bookstore, but there's a secret room in the back. And he's standing in front of this wall of monitors.
Right.
And it's all the heads.
That's right.
Of
different agencies or whoever the people are,
the cabal that's out there overseeing these operations. And he gives this explanation in which he says to these people who themselves don't know that much about the Spy Superb, the Spy Superb doesn't exist. And of course they're utterly confused. And he explains his exploits are only whispered about in espionage circles, never caught, never seen. His true identity never revealed. Enemy agent files on Spy Superb are absolutely empty. And then he goes on to explain that this started during World War II as a joint operation between the U.S. Office of Strategic Services and the French, I don't speak French, but French Bureau Central de Renseignements et d'Action.
I'm going to take that.
I think that's probably exactly that's at least how Steve Martin would have pronounced it.
That's right.
But they described the Spy Superb at its inception as a spy who was a perfect physical specimen, IQ off the charts, master of disguise, fluent in every language, genius tactician, also Spy Superb. We learn that the original actual Spy Superb who was trained like this was killed in his first mission.
That's right.
In an explosive mishap. But they fall onto this idea that really we just need the idea of the Spy Superb, which even makes it more potent because if you catch someone that you think is the Spy Superb, one, we're going to find out that they don't know they're the Spy Superb.
That's right.
And two, you could put any other moron in their place. So it's described like in this way. This is how the Handler describes it. What followed was generation after generation of unsuspecting agents, unwitting accomplices that carried the mantle of the Spy Superb and espionage Baba Yaga. The mythic super spy, our agency began to recruit civilians. What better cover for a spy than not realizing you are one? Entire missions completed without their awareness. You can't betray what you don't know. The espionage community believed we had an unkillable super spy, an agent capable of being anywhere and completing any mission, a flawless agent, the envy of every other agency. Enemy nations poured billions of dollars and countless agents into exposing our Spy Superb. Spy Superb was priceless. But now that greatest agent is dead, or at least the last incarnation of him. And he goes on, the Handler does, to explain to his overseers or supervisors, whoever these people are in the shadows on the screens, that it's okay. We've identified a new candidate to be the Spy Superb. And they said he checks all the boxes. The most unwitting accomplice, the most oblivious agent we have ever had, which is a perfect explanation. And then you get this page turn.
Right.
And that's one of those things about the graphic novel is like you hear all that description And then you turn the page, and there's our picture of J. Bartholomew III.
This guy. That's right.
Just like you described a minute ago with all of his accoutrement.
Yeah, just looks like a slob-looking dude with, I mean, from his shirt to his pants. This is just an everyday kind of normal dude with a sling-over backpack kind of thing where he's holding all this stuff. This guy. So funny.
And on top of that, you want to talk about his mustache a little bit? Because I feel like his mustache says a lot about him.
Just this pencil thin thing on either side, right? It looks so weird. Barely trying. This guy is trying to grow some kind of facial hair, and he doesn't look like a real person.
There is an important mission that he's going to have to accomplish.
That's right. There's a problem, right? I guess there's something has been leaked, or there's information out there that has all the names of the previous spy superbs, right? And if they were to fall into the wrong hands, then their secret would be out there public.
And we learned specifically that China and Russia are hip to this.
Right.
And the handler's biggest problem right at the moment is there's got to be this data pickup or a data drop of some kind. And it's going to take place at a certain place in a couple of days. And they know that the spy superb is going to be watched or looked for, I guess maybe is the best way to say it. And so someone who is the spy superb has to pick this up, or else the Operation Spy Superb is blown forever.
Right.
So now we meet J. Bartholomew.
Yes, that's right.
And we meet him in a coffee shop. He's hitting on the barista who's serving his drink right when
Poorly.
he walks in.
Yeah.
Yeah, poorly, of course. He's not making headway with this young woman who is rolling her eyes so hard.
Yeah, completely.
And then, of course, he's talking about, too, like what a great person he is and how he's going to write this novel and be world famous. And then it shows very clear, like in one of the panels where it shows the empty tip jar and he's taking his coffee and walking off. So he's going to stiff her on the tip, too. But he sits down with his friend, and you can tell pretty fast the friend, this guy doesn't have any. One, this guy is equally oblivious.
That's right.
Except that he realizes Jay is a moron.
That's right. This may be his only friend that he has, and I think he even knows how desperate of a situation that is, because Jay is just like blowing smoke.
This is where we get to that conversation between Jay and his friend, where you quoted that language a few minutes ago about how his greatest fear was that he wouldn't be recognized or understood in his time.
This is the great fear. That's right. That's right.
But he has, and this is the one I wrote down, it's this back and forth where he tells his friend, it's Proust. Proustian, you could say. And his friend just says, you've read Proust? And Jay's response is, no. But I've read about him.
Yeah.
I get it. Landslide of details that you hope add up to something meaningful. But better. The guy raises an eyebrow, and he's better than Proust.
No, I haven't read them, but I get the gist.
Get the idea. But I'm going to do it to the next level. And I'll confess here, I like to think of myself as reasonably well-read. I've read The Spy Superb, at least. I have not read Proust.
Neither have I.
Okay. Yeah, that's two of us. I did read The Confederacy of Dunces, though, twice.
That's right. Not Proust.
No. All right, so after all of that introduction, and I realize for dear listener, I hope that you're still with us. I realize that's a lot of wind-up for this particular story, but now the action begins.
Yeah, right.
And so Jay says to his friend, I've got to get to work. Also, I've got to stop by this cell phone repair shop and get my phone. And we learned from the handler that they had, quote-unquote, moved him into place by causing a virus to be downloaded onto his phone.
Right.
So he goes over to this repair shop. You want to start talking us through this scene a little bit?
Sure. Before he goes to the repair shop, he stiffs this homeless guy, right? So you get from the sense that he's not tipping anybody. He's not helping him on the side of the street. This guy is not just like a real generous. He is singly focused on himself. That's right. He's head to the phone shop. He's going to get his phone. Has a little conversation with the person who's there. And there's some kind of accident, right? Where all these phones fall on the ground and get shuffled up together. And someone is in the corner watching all this go down, right? That's right.
But even leading into that accident, it is a classic physical comedy scene where, you go into stores and they have the display case and like usually the sign that says, please don't lean on the glass.
Yeah.
And he's trying to be cool when he has this conversation because the clerk is telling him, yeah, we got your phone all fixed. It seems like the reason you had this virus on your phone was these videos you must have been downloading. Right. And in the panels that Jay is sweating.
That's right.
Sweat coming
what
off.
videos?
Yeah, I didn't download any videos. Maybe could the virus have put the videos on my phone?
That's right.
It's like, no.
Smooth, dude. Yeah.
Listen, So he starts leaning on this glass display case as he's having the conversation, and the weight of his elbow and shoulders cracks the case. And when it does, and of course he jumps back and says, "Oh, I could have been cut. Like, this is everybody else's fault." And the clerk then spills this big box of cell phones onto the floor. And so that's where this woman enters the picture.
That's right. And she's watching this all go down. He gets down on his knees to pick up finding which phone in the jumble of phones is his. And she's there with him watching, because whoever picks up this phone is the guy, right? Whoever kind of takes the phone, that's the cue, and she gets involved in.
And so she actually gets down on the floor and starts as if she is helping to pick up the mess and clean it up. And of course, Jay he identifies the one he thinks is his phone, and he picks it up, but he's not staying around to help clean up the glass that he broke.
Not this guy.
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
So he's walking out. But this is when we get the laugh out loud best scene,
Absolutely right.
maybe of the whole graphic novel.
I think that's right.
And man, I just want to turn it over to you and let you talk about when Jay leaves the store.
So this is where you get to know this is what kind of book we're in for, right? This is the man who knew too little type of stuff. This is a classic Inspector Clouseau type of thing, where he goes back to his apartment. He's putting his key in the door. He's walking into the place where he's crazy familiar. And all of a sudden, you start just the way the graphic novel kind of shows you is that there's someone else in the apartment, right? And maybe not just one, but he's walking through his apartment doing all the different kind of things, and he's not alone.
But he doesn't know this.
He doesn't know this, no. As you'll find out, he's clueless in almost every situation. He's being watched, and there's someone in the apartment. They've watched him kind of take this phone, and so because he's been keyed as the guy who may be the spy, someone has infiltrated his apartment and is going to be jumping him. And it's not a regular jump. He sees him. He sees that there's a burglar, or what he would think maybe is someone who's going to steal something from him, because obviously he has so many things in his house that are worth a value.
Of course. But that's not what he thinks they are, though, because these men are all dressed in like blue coveralls.
Oh, that's right.
And they have these like red stocking
forgot
caps
about
on.
that part.
So he doesn't think these are burglars.
That's right.
In fact, he drops his drink that he's got. He says, "Oh, you scared me," when he realizes they're there. But he immediately thinks of the most innocent explanation.
I didn't even go back and remember what that was. Now I'm forgetting that part.
So he assumes that they are repairmen that his building has sent there.
Oh, yeah.
"Oh, I've been waiting a week for you guys to come." And he goes and he takes
to the
him
toilet.
He takes him into the bathroom, and here's the toilet. It won't stop running.
Yeah.
And then while you guys are here too, let's go into the kitchen. And it's really in the kitchen where he's trying to point out repairs that need to be made that the series of events unfolds. So two of the repairs that need to be made in his kitchen that he thinks these guys who are just standing there in silence are going to do for him. And they look menacing, by the way.
Right. Oh, yeah. That's right.
But one of the burners on his gas stovetop is not working correctly.
That's right.
And then another one is that there's some kind of leak with his dishwasher.
That's right. There's something in the dishwasher that's leaking. Of course, the most obvious explanation is that the repair company sent, without him calling, these three huge burly guys to help him fix these things without him even asking. And so he's showing him all these kind of things. And as he's like going through, all of a sudden I don't know what light, he's showing him how it won't ignite, the burner on the stove. And once he clicks it, this huge flame like comes over and just like rushes over one of the guys there and completely knocks him out.
It's a Home Alone, my head is on fire after the blowtorch goes off.
Yeah, right.
On Joe Pesci.
And Jay's, what were you doing getting so close to the stove? What were you thinking? And so he goes to get the fire extinguisher to help put out the flame. And in doing so, it goes off haphazardly and knocks one of the other guys out. So you've got two guys who have been completely knocked out just because of Jay's bumbling. Right.
That's right. And then on the way up with the fire extinguisher to use it, he's turning and he cracks one of them in the jaw with the fire extinguisher. And then he drops it, and that's when it goes off. And it hits the first guy on the head, the guy who had just been burned on his head. But it sprays the fire extinguisher stuff all over the floor. And then the third guy comes in, and he's going to make his attack on Jay at this point.
That's right. And is this the guy with the gun?
man, I don't even remember what he had.
So yeah, there's the third guy has a gun and is pulling it out on Jay, and he slips on the fire extinguisher stuff, which then makes the gun go off and puts a bullet in one of the other guys.
He's already down on the floor, gets shot square through the forehead. When he slips and falls back, he doesn't just fall to the ground.
No.
We've got that open dishwasher.
The dishwasher's there with every knife that Jay owns, like just sticking up. And so the guy who falls back from the fire extinguisher stuff, he gets a bunch of knives in the back of his chest or in the back of his back.
And so he gets out his phone and he's going to call an ambulance. And that's when he discovers, oh shoot, this isn't my phone. It's a picture of the woman from the store.
Yeah.
And he's like, I have her phone. There's a problem. And that's going to be our inciting action for the next episode. But I want to talk about the final page reveal. And this is a big thing in comics, the final page reveal. A lot of time, like, if there's a villain who's been lurking in the shadows, it's usually you do the page turn to the final, and then, boom, it's Doctor Doom, or it's Galactus, or whatever. It's that final page reveal. But here, our final page review is like an overhead shot of the scene that's left behind. And do you want to describe that for us?
The scene of his apartment?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, after he sees the phone of the woman or whatever, you've got just this big aerial shot of the kitchen with these three guys knocked out in the kitchen, blood everywhere, and Jay is there on the phone and just says, some kind of mix-up. He's innocent and dumb, and yeah, he's just completely had all this violence or whatever that he's going to later take almost credit for, you know what I mean? Just, yeah, man, I did that.
Chad, one reason I have maybe some expectation that things are going okay right now is that Travell is like shoulder shaking laughing over here at this description.
He's trying to peek at these pictures to see what's going on. Hilarious.
I have a feeling Travell, who will be a guest on an upcoming episode, maybe once he doesn't have to do quite so much hand-holding with me on producing the thing along the way, I have a feeling Travell will probably be leaving here today with a copy of Spy Superb. Oh, let me say this as well about Spy Superb. A lot of libraries have access to Hoopla as a digital download service. The Central Arkansas Library System here in the Little Rock area in Pulaski County has that as well. You can download audiobooks, ebooks, graphic novels, magazines, and that kind of thing. And so if your library has Hoopla and has some of those comics, in addition to looking back at my physical individual issue copies, I also pulled up and wanted to see what it would look like on the iPad, the library copy from Hoopla. All right. I kept calling it the last page because I wanted to say it was, but there is a little bit more in this issue.
Yep.
And I don't know how much you want to talk about this. Comic books, this is something that is not unusual in comic books, to have a backup story. So you've got your main story that takes up the bulk of the issue, and then you've got a shorter 4 or 5 page story, something like that, that could relate in some way or tell you something about an important character, or sometimes, like DC Comics does this a lot, it might be a completely separate story that they've given a tryout to an artist or a writer to give them a couple of published pages and see if, is this something that's going to work? But here we've got a backup story that tells us the origin of the Handler himself. And I don't know for time whether you want to go through that at all or not. I thought the backup stories we get in the second and third comics were a little more interesting.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, and they do. I mean, it does a really cool job with just the coloring and things where you see this is like a flashback of sorts, right? Where there's a monotone kind of thing where it's just a real basic coloring, and you've got the handler going through who's choosing some of these people who are going to be the Spy Superb, and he will be setting up each one of these guys, but they're all just like nobodies, right? One's a chess champion, one's a poetry major, a video game addict, and then you've got the failed author, which is our boy, right?
That's our guy.
Slim mustache J. Bartholomew III.
That's right. So before we move into issue number 2, probably something I ought to have said at the beginning of this podcast, and that is, man, we're going through every bit of these books. We are leaving no stone unturned.
This is great.
But part of that is, maybe I'm supposed to do a spoiler warning. Sorry, I'm new at this, gang. But there's nothing that will be unspoiled from this. I still think this book would be fun, even if you knew every beat of the whole story, for somebody to pick up and read. And the experience of the art and the way that the dialogue flows on the page, I think is just a ton of fun. All right, let's go now into issue number 2. And this is our...
Spy Superb is not safe.
That's right.
Yeah.
This is our Safeway cover.
Yeah, that's right.
Paper bag cover.
Now, on your book, so on my chapter, when I open up this chapter, it says Spy Superb is not safe. On one page, though, it has, this is what we were talking about earlier with these receipts, right? There's a receipt on the page there. And so the way I read books like this, I read tons of mystery books. Whodunits are that's my genre that I really like. And so I always think that there's things there, if it's there for a reason, there's stuff. And so on this receipt, there's all kinds of different numbers and digits and things. The first thing is all the items that he buys. Did you notice this at all, like when you were looking through it? There's 5 things that this guy buys. He buys bananas, peanut butter, shellfish, cashews, and strawberries.
Yep.
All things that obviously are highly allergic, right? That people can be highly allergic to. I don't know why he's buying those things. I don't know there's all these digits out by them. This later down the road, it asks you, this is a place where you can go to the author's website or email him stuff. And I immediately thought, is there Easter eggs, or is this something that he's leading me down a path, right? Am I going to get a better experience or a different experience if I go through this? Is this code? And
I love that idea.
it didn't happen. Yeah.
No,
or at least I wasn't smart enough to figure it out.
It's funny and maybe I wasn't either. It's funny for you that receipt just shows up as like alongside the cover of the second issue. So for me,
It's the back.
It's the back cover of the single issue.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't realize this until this exact moment. Bananas, peanut butter, shellfish, cashews, strawberries. In that backstory of the handler, when he was training to be a top secret agent, he was given an assignment that he was supposed to go out. He and all the guys he was competing with for this top agent position were supposed to go out and execute a target that they'd been given. And the handler is explaining that they were even told the more brutal the kill, the higher they'd be scored.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because that's exactly right. He doesn't want to kill. Like he's trained with all these different things, a lethal guy, but he gets a conscience and doesn't want to go through the violent act of killing somebody by choking them out or anything like that. So he becomes this expert of poison, right?
That's right. So yeah, his conscience does not prevent him from killing people. It prevents him from like the physical act of killing people.
Right.
So he develops this special skill that he's going to use as the handler, where he moves people into place. And so his target, and so I guess we do end up talking through the backstory of the handler. His target is this rich guy, and he has a private chef. So he makes these moves that gets the private chef fired and a new private chef brought in who doesn't know that this rich guy has these allergies.
That's right. Okay, that's making more sense.
And he gets himself hired at this place and purchases the groceries and even leaves out a pretend recipe for this rich guy's favorite smoothie. And I think these highly allergic things on the receipt,
Those are the things.
those must be the ingredients, right?
Yeah.
And of course, he ends up accomplishing this kill through a proxy, the chef, who doesn't know that he has committed this murder. In the same way, the handler is later going to be, he can't be the killer agent that he was supposed to be,
Right.
but he's perfect to be the handler.
That's right. That's so great. That's so good.
So as we get into issue 2 of Spy Superb, something else that I completely forgot to point out when we looked at the Trader Joe's cover of the first issue is that when we had those textbooks in school, I wrote song lyrics usually on I'd be bored in class and I'd turn over the back of my book and I'd start writing out the lyrics to a Pearl Jam song or something like that.
Yeah, okay.
Because this would have been the early 90s.
Yep.
Something off of 10. But on the inside paperback cover, you have these instructions.
Yes.
And this actually shows up at different places in the individual issues as well. But so describe what the sketches are that someone has done on this cover.
Yes, you've got these directions on how to make a ninja star, right? You're right. Generationally, man, this is exactly, I was totally vibing with this kind of stuff because there was all kinds of growing up trying to figure out the best way to make not just paper airplanes, but these little throwing stars or these little paper puzzle things, right?
Footballs.
Yeah, the footballs, right? That's right, to kick them through the...
But also those little finger puzzle things.
That's
where you
exactly
count
right.
off, who
Right.
am I going to marry? What kind of car am I
And
going to...
you want them tight, you know what I mean? You want those edges just perfect, right? This sharp thing. And so that's what this whole thing is, like this instruction to make the perfect ninja star using paper, which is all setting up the introduction of one of the characters that's coming up next, which may have been my favorite part of the whole comic book series, honestly.
Oh, no kidding.
Rochambeau.
Okay.
For sure.
When we get to him, I'm going to have you describe all about Rochambeau for us, too, who is the spy that the Russians are going to activate in just a minute.
That's right.
And also, there's so many things about this that are weird. He's got this French name, Rochambeau.
That's right.
But he's the Russian spy.
That's right.
All right. So first, though, to open the issue, we return to the apartment where Jay was last, but that's not who's there now.
Yeah, you've got a wide out picture of the same apartment that we just left at the end of the comic book.
And so what you're seeing here is called a double-page spread.
Okay.
And so this is something that comic book creators will do once in a while as an effective way of like really catching the eye. You can do like a single splash page after a page turn, or you can do this sort of double-page spread where you've got one image that just takes up the whole thing.
It's got the Spy Superb kind of logo there, but you've got the three agents, right? The Jay's not anywhere to be seen. There's these three bodies on the floor. Blood has spread even further than it was before. And you've got this guy in a suit who is there, who's just been introduced and saying, no way one agent could do all this, right?
Right, and he's there with the handler.
That's right.
And so the scene opens with them going, what happened here, right? Yeah. And so they're having this back and forth conversation where they're saying, who took out the Russian hit squad? And so I guess it's the first time we learned these were Russian agents that were killed.
Right.
And they say, maybe China sent their own hit squad and maybe they took it out? No way one agent could do all this.
Yeah, you're telling me one man took out our entire elite squad single-handedly?
Yeah, so at this point now, when we turn the next page, we are now in Moscow. We get this up at the top. We're in Moscow.
They're reporting, right, to the powers that be, like, what happened to our hit squad? Did they take out the Spy Superb? No, in fact, like, they all got taken out.
That's exactly right. And they realize there's nothing the Spy Superb can't do. Yeah, right. He expertly took down our entire team. And so they decide, we have to do something. And you can picture these agents in Russia who are having this conversation as approaching the higher levels of their secret service kind of agency.
Right.
But not the highest level.
That's right.
And so they realize we got to execute the nuclear bomb here. We got to go with the biggest option we have, which is bring in Rochambeau.
Rochambeau. Yeah, this dude is in the next page is this large picture of a guy sitting in what looks like a French pastry place, right? Just a small little table out on the outside, sipping an espresso, and it has his little name there, Rochambeau, which it's spelled even like Roche is R-O-C-H-E, and then his last name is Chambeau.
And the first visual we get of Rochambeau, who these two agents who were talking in the office in Moscow, who had to get presidential permission to put this man into circulation. And they say Chambeau has left a body count in his wake that would populate a small country. This is an excellent agent. And when we see him, I mean, he's the exact opposite of J. Bartholomew III, right?
Yeah.
He looks like he fits at this French or Italian cafe that he's sitting outside.
This is an assassin, right?
That's right.
This is a James Bond character, right? This is a worthy adversary for an actual killer.
That's right. And he's got his hair slicked back. He looks sharp in his suit. And then he gets a text message on his phone, and it's just a picture of Jay
yes.
and two words, eliminate target.
He takes a little sip of espresso. Game on.
Game on, that's right. So not only were the Americans who were in Jay's apartment finding these bodies utterly confused, not only were the Russians blown away by how their whole hit squad could have been taken out, now we're in the China spy offices, and they're trying to figure out what exactly went on. They can't believe that the Spy Superb must have taken out an entire Russian hit squad. And we introduce Agent Lucky Long, and it's L-E-O-N-G is her last name. She's their best field agent, and she was actually in place to intercept the handoff, but she didn't have a kill order. So they want to know. So going back to that
This
first
is the
scene,
girl from the phone shop.
She was the woman in the phone shop who was down there helping pick up things, and we saw at the time even that she was kind of eyeing Jay, right?
And whose phone Jay ends up having in the end. When Jay looks after the kitchen killing, he looks at the phone that he actually has, and he has the picture of Lucky Long on his phone.
That's right. And the Chinese spy agency is like, why didn't you kill him when you had the chance in this shop? And she said, you guys didn't give me the kill order.
Right.
You guys gave me the intercept the handoff order. And they're like, we're giving you the kill order now. Kill, go. And so we see her next, and this is another one of these page turn things, where we see her, she's on a rooftop from above the phone repair shop, and she's got these high-tech goggles on and a giant sniper.
That's exactly. She's got like night vision goggles and like a huge scope on this sniper rifle. Like the combination of these two things.
Right. So we know now that she's going to be in play as well. So we've got our one Russian, one Chinese spy that are going to be, not just spy, but assassin. Right. They're going to be out to kill poor Jay.
And these two people have to have, these governments have to have a special kind of like permission to use these people, right? These other guys who were in the kitchen, I'm sure they were great, but they were just like lackeys. These people are like the president of these countries almost has to give the signal to say, put Rochambeau in place, right? Send in Lucky Long. This is our best agent.
That's right. The scene changes again, and now we go to Jay back in his coffee shop where we'd met him the first time. And he's sitting at a different table from where he is. And his friend is like, dude, why are you sitting over there? And Jay stops him. He says, don't use my real name. I'm, quote, rolling incognito. He's sweating, and he says, I just killed 3 hitmen in my apartment. And his friend says, like, are you method acting?
You're not doing your method writing again, are you? This has happened before. Like, he's gone weird before. And
that's right.
Trying to immerse himself in the story and got a little carried away. Is this what this is again?
That's right. And so at this point, he thinks, oh no, that woman who we know is Lucky Long from the phone shop who got their phones mixed up accidentally, she must be in terrible danger. And this is where the hero inside Jay starts to come out.
He starts thinking this is up to him to figure this out. He also notices to his friends, hey, they were either Russians or Chinese that were these guys who were sent to kill him. And his friend's like, you couldn't tell if they were Russian or Chinese. It all happened so quickly, he says. You know what I mean? They were deep cover. So completely fooled me. It was a fight to the death.
We had learned at some point in the first issue that Jay's job is he works as a clerk in a bookstore.
Yeah.
And part of how we learn like what an obnoxious, in addition to oblivious guy Jay is, he was telling this story to his friend about how this woman had come in saying, hey, I'm looking for this particular book, and it was like a light, breezy summer beach read. And he spends the whole time, and this is a classic, like going back to Confederacy of Dunces, this is the epitome of Ignatius J. Reilly.
You're right.
He's like, basically, you mouth-breathing fool, you cretin, this woman who just wants to buy a book for her vacation. Like, he doesn't put it in those terms, but he's talking down to her, and he's saying, what you really want, I think he gives her a copy of the first chapter of his novel that he's writing, talks to her for 30 minutes, and then at the end, she's, can I please just have the book that I asked you for?
Right.
And this guy, now the friend is, Jay, don't you have to go to work? And Jay is like, has this seize the day kind of moment. He's like, no, I have to return this phone to Lucky Long. I'm taking personal days. Like it's a victory.
And he has to then get in disguise, right? He knows that he's not going to be able to go in without changing his appearance. And so he has this whole thing. It's hilarious. Like he walks into an alleyway and just ruffles his hair and puts glasses on.
Sunglasses. Yeah.
Sunglasses.
Oh, and he pops his collar.
Yeah. Pop collar, ruffles the hair, right?
And before he goes off on this mission, though, this is Jay's understanding of what's going on at this point so far. He says, it's a classic wrong man scenario. Don't you see? I picked up the phone with the secret intel meant for her. Now they're after me and this phone. I have to find her. She's in incredible danger. I need to get what's on the phone to her before they get to me, and I'm going to need to take care of her. So he thinks he's got secret intel. He doesn't know who this woman is.
No.
He wants to hand it back to a woman who happens to be a Chinese spy.
That's exactly right. Who has a sniper trained on like the area watching for him. Yeah.
And so he gets in the car and he's going to go to the airport to go to Australia, where he believes she is located. And he gets some reality, a bit of dose of reality hits him because he starts sweating once he gets in the car. And he's like, oh man, it's on now.
Yeah. What is going to happen? Where I'm going to have to go? And can't even get the car, gets going, and then the car dies, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, his car kind of clunks out and he has to leave it. He's got to call an Uber or something.
Yes.
But that actually puts him out on the street for just a minute. And we see that Lucky Long, who is not in Australia, by the way, She is like a block behind him, tailing him.
Right.
She is doing spy work. She is following him from the shadows, trying to figure out where on earth is this guy going. So she follows him all the way to the airport, and he goes in and he buys a ticket to Australia. And so she ends up doing the same. And so they end up on the same flight, but she's hidden herself from him. He arrives in Australia. And by the way, as he's making his way through the streets to the airport and through the airport, he's taking on the role of a dangerous secret agent in the most ridiculous ways. Right? He gets on the airplane and he stops the flight attendant.
Right.
He's, ma'am, if anyone's giving you trouble, just let me know. I'll spring into action.
That's right.
She's like, please don't do that.
No deed, sir. Please don't step in. I know you can't formally ask me for help, but know that I'm ready. I see you. I hear you.
Okay. Now we're at the hotel in Australia. And as Jay is walking through the hotel, we see Rochambeau sitting at a table in the hotel lobby.
Right.
So he's already figured out where this guy is going.
That's right.
And then we also see that Lucky Long is following Rochambeau, and Rochambeau is following Jay as he walks out of the hotel and back out onto the street. So we've got this scene of like oblivious man being trailed by agent, being trailed by agent.
Right. Which comes to a head really soon. Like right there, they're walking through the city, and Rochambeau kind of notices that he's being tailed by Lucky Long, and so he engages. Right, he attacks Lucky, and there's a fight that ensues. And Lucky reaches out to scratch Rochambeau. I guess has like really sharp nails or something like that. And also must be laced with poison because Rochambeau immediately starts foaming from the mouth. And it's like, and he's out.
That's right. And this alleyway fight scene ends with, at least me, the first time I'm reading it, thinking she's killed Rochambeau.
Right.
Who's going to be the next character to pop up in his place? Because this agent was put into action and immediately killed. Turns out that's not the case. But from here, Jay gets in a Jeep Wrangler kind of vehicle, and he travels to the outback, to this house that's like way out in the desert type area, which I guess is the address that he'd found on the phone that he thinks is Lucky Long's house.
He's going to be able to return the phone to this lady who lives in this house, and she's going to thank him for saving the day.
That's right. And so Jay goes into the house, and it's a mostly abandoned house. There are all these empty cans and bottles laying around on the floor. And he's, man, this woman's kind of a slob, right? What is this type of house? Of course, she doesn't live there. But Lucky has continued to follow Jay this whole time. And so Lucky follows Jay into the house, and he spots her. And she's, oh no, I've got to leap into action and kill him now. But instead, Jay starts talking to her, saying, oh, I'm so glad I found you. You have no idea how much danger you're in. Right. So she realizes then, oh, I don't kill this guy right away. He's got some information I can get from him, or at the very least, I got to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, he's even telling her, like, I eliminated six agents. All of a sudden, now it's 6 agents that he killed in his kitchen.
Yeah, every time he retells the story, the number goes up just a little bit, because he had told his friend 5 at one point.
That's right.
When they were in the coffee shop. So, but the whole time they're having this conversation, Lucky has pulled out a gun, and she's, like, hiding it behind her back, because she's trying to decide, like, when do I kill him? And he's thinking I'm her savior the whole time. He starts to slowly put it together that Jay is a moron. Jay is there just like waxing poetic about his prowess as a spy. Utter nonsense. He says, but who are you really? She says to him. His response is, maybe the smartest man you'll ever meet. But don't let me fool you. Intellect is like a sharp sword. It dulls over time.
It dulls over
much
time.
So that's why he's not doing smart things.
Absolutely right.
So I guess they leave there. They're seeing this like plane flying overhead, and they piece together that it might be a spy plane of some kind. And so they're going to get out of there, and they're going to go back to this hotel in the bigger city that they were in. And that's where they're having this conversation, and Lucky is realizing, like, this guy is an absolute moron.
In these conversations, this is when he starts really dropping some of these jewels, right? He starts going through his Rolodex of little wisdom things. She'll say, hey, we need to make a plan. And he'll say, make a plan and plan to ignore it, or save time and don't plan at all. It's just like, what?
The experience of his years in the spy game.
That's right.
Chad, I should say this to you. When I first started talking about the concept for this podcast, our friend Shannon, I'd asked him, like, how long do you think we should make the podcast? And I'm thinking like 45 minutes to an hour.
Okay.
20 minutes tops.
Yeah.
I was like, Shannon, how long have we known each other? Dude, I can't do anything in 20 minutes.
So what if no one listens to this long? So what if they stopped after the first issue? It's
I'm going to do
this
it
is for
my way.
you, Mark. This is for you.
Absolutely. Okay. So I guess we've probably gone past the 20-minute mark. So we're back at the hotel now, and Lucky and Jay are there, and they're in Jay's hotel room. And Jay thinks he's decided he's James Bond by this point.
Right.
And he thinks they're going to have a romantic encounter. And meanwhile, Lucky is just like trying to question him and get out all the intel she can get. So she's asking him about Spy Superb. And then at some point she realizes the Spy Superb isn't real. There is no Spy Superb. It's a classic useful idiot scenario. So she tries to explain this to Jay, like telling him, like, Jay, you're not a super spy. Because I think at some point he says he realizes that he was a sleeper agent all along.
That's right.
And
This
it's
is
been activated.
That's right.
Like he's that Matt Damon character.
Jason Bourne.
Yeah, like he's a Jason Bourne kind of thing.
Yep.
It's just innate in him. And she tells him, no, they're using you, Jay. You are the useful idiot. They sent you to intercept my phone. And Jay says, of course they did. She says, you are amazing. Meaning like you're a moron. And he just goes, yes.
Yes, exactly.
So that's when Lucky explains to Jay that she swapped their phones at the repair shop, and none of what followed was an accident. So, Chad, at this point, reading, like doing a careful read for the podcast, I'm having a crisis at this point because I can't figure out the swap at the repair shop. Jay is supposed to pick up a phone at the repair shop. It's supposed to be his own phone. Now, it's possible the handler could have known that there would be a Chinese agent there who would try to make a switch of some kind. But if that was the case, if the Chinese agent had made the switch and, I don't know, gotten the phone with the intel, why would she continue to follow him?
I don't know. The phone thing never really clicked with me as making sense. Is that he was going to get his phone. So is it his phone that has these names on it that she's wanting, but he leaves with her phone that has all these digits. It says that in the thing we first looked at, it has all these numbers. What are all these numbers and names? What are these names? So her phone is the one that has all the things in it that she put in the box.
And that's right, too, because when they're here having this scene in the hotel, part of the reason why she didn't kill him back at the house out in the outback was because he tells her, I have your phone. And she's like, you've got my phone? And he says, yeah, back at the hotel. I didn't bring it here.
Right.
And so it's like she wants the phone. If she had that information to begin with, why would any of this have occurred? So at this point, I'm really like, oh man, there's a major plot hole here that I cannot reconcile.
Right.
And it was upsetting to me.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, because I'm like, no, this is our first issue. I'm trying to tell people why these things are great. There can't be a big plot hole. We will find out in the third issue. There is not.
Okay.
There is an explanation.
That's right.
But at this point, I'm just confused. But anyway, he is going to give her the phone back now. And he's locked it away safe in the hotel safe.
That's
and
right.
of course, he can't remember the PIN.
Yep.
He's like, I use the same PIN for everything, but he's getting the wrong number. But then he said, sometimes I do it in the numbers in reverse. And in the meantime, she puts like some plastic explosives or something on there and just blows up the hotel safe.
That's right. Gets the phone out.
That's right. And she realizes, because she hears things in the hallway, that Rochambeau is coming. So that's when we know he's not dead, actually.
Right.
And now we're going to have a fight. And Lucky is asking him, like, you're trained on how to fight, right? I mean, you killed all those Russian agents? And he says, it was more of a primal instinctual thing. Not exactly trained, more like improvised violence of opportunity kind of thing.
Yeah.
And she's, oh, shoot, I'm in this fight against Rochambeau on my own.
I'm alone.
And she tells him basically, stand aside.
Yeah, that's right. Now, I want to tell you, too, like, when I first read this through, and in the French diner, when Rochambeau is first introduced, right, Rochambeau clicked lots of familiarity with me, more in my musical theater knowledge, because if you remember in Hamilton, that's one of the parts of the song. They say, it's a line from the song.
Okay.
And maybe in the back of my mind, there was part of me that knew that was a historical kind of figure, but I definitely Googled the mess out of this, right?
Tell me about it then.
So, this is in the first issue, right? First issue, I'm looking through this. I'm trying to get these Easter eggs, thinking that there's breadcrumbs all around the way. So Rochambeau was a French military kind of person who lost like a battle and then was used as like a code name for other things that the Revolutionary War that the Patriots would use.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so Rochambeau, that's a name. And then later on, and this is something I also didn't know, but this is crucial to this story.
At least to the character.
Yeah, so if you're Googling, right, Rochambeau, it's going to give you like one, this French military leader that was also used as like a code name in the Revolutionary War. And then 2, also a common name for the game rock, paper, scissors.
That's absolutely right.
You know what I mean? So that's the second definition. I didn't know. I maybe knew more about 1 than I knew about 2. I've never heard rock, paper, scissors called Rochambeau. Did you know that?
So I couldn't have called that out to you, but when I read the book for the first time and I put that together, that he was going to be the rock, paper, scissors killer, basically,
Yeah.
that I was like, I have heard that called Rochambeau before, but I would have just called the game rock, paper, scissors.
I made notes, right? I'm like, oh, okay, this is what this is. This is what Rochambeau would be. Not thinking that it was going to, I thought maybe the Revolutionary War thing was going to be something that was going to be a callback, that he was French or that he was in a French restaurant was already just a little bit cute. But when this dude in this fight, when they're in the hallway and they run into Rochambeau for the second time, and Rochambeau reaches into his suit pocket to pull out scissors, I lost it. I thought, I know where this is going. This is so great. Please give it all to me, because they'd already given you the paper thing. That started clicking back at the beginning of this chapter. They give you the paper throwing star, right?
Instructions on how to make a throwing
That didn't mean anything before, right. And now I'm starting to think, paper, scissors, here we go. This guy's going to be epic. That's why he becomes my favorite character.
That's right. So the very last panel, basically, of the main story in issue number 2 is Lucky and Jay have gone out into the hallway now where they know they're going to have to confront Rochambeau, and it turns out a couple other guys as well. And as they have this stare down, Rochambeau reaches into the inside jacket of his pocket and he pulls out this pair of scissors, which is not what you expect normally.
And even Jay is like, scissors?
Yeah, right.
Huh?
So then that leads us into our backup story for issue 2, which, you noted that the coloring was a little different. They used some of the tools of a graphic novel to offset this story. Even if the pages are not like that white or cream white background, it's more of a beige color page. Mm-hmm. And so we get this backup story of Rochambeau.
This distressed, kind of paper thing. It has a paper clip at the top of the page that has the name, I guess, of this story, Rock, Paper, Scissors, from Dossier 002 to 001, with this story of this little boy who's growing up, and in Russia, I'm guessing it's cold, and he's, I guess, orphaned, right?
That's right. And he finds himself abandoned in the woods where he is freezing. But this couple finds him, then turn out to be his adoptive parents.
So they adopt him, bring him home, and find out this kid has got teaching him some skills. He's making little paper figurines. He's learning sewing and needlework and getting these different kind of skills to even tailor his own suit. This epic suit. It's just really cool.
With the best of intentions, his adoptive mother teaches him sewing and origami.
Yeah.
And they're just things that they can do together. And one of them is a skill that's going to be practical for him, or should be, in sewing. Origami is more of usually an artistic kind of endeavor. But, of course, he's going to find some use for him. But it turns out this sweet boy is also a psycho.
That's right. And has a little bit of a superpower in that when he even pricks himself with one of these needles, like, it doesn't hurt, right? So he doesn't have a pain in his hand. So you've got one picture where he's got just tons and tons of little needle stick pins sticking out of his hand because his hand doesn't have any nerve ending.
Yeah, and I do want to make sure you make the term superpower, and I don't want to give anybody the misimpression. One of the things I love about this book is that it's absurdist from beginning to end.
Yeah.
But it stays in the realm of, like, real life and real world. It's not a superpower. It's the nerves in his hands were probably killed
from the cold or something.
Yeah, freezing in the Russian woods.
Frostbite in the woods, so he doesn't have any nerve endings in his hand, so he can just prick away with his pins.
And then, in fact, we also see him in this training his hands by punching into brick walls and that kind of thing. And so those fists become his rocks.
That's exactly right. The fist part, that he can do a lot of damage with either rock his hands, paper these ninja stars that he ends up even putting some poison pins on the end of, or scissors. And the last, my favorite page even, which is the end of this episode or the series here, has a wide shot of Rochambeau with this suit that he's put it together himself, and all through it, like these almost like an X-ray machine where it's showing where all of his scissors and ninja stars are hidden within his suit, right? It's so crazy great.
Beautiful use of a full page, too, for just a single image.
Yeah.
And it was like when we first met Jay, where you have a full body picture of him, and you've got all of his accoutrement around
his
him.
weapons.
And although Jay was armed with a book of famous quotes,
That's right.
Rochambeau has got scissors. All right, so we go now into issue 3, and we've got another one of our classic brown bag covers. This one is the Costco cover.
Mm-hmm.
And the only part of the Costco logo we see on there is the word cost, and then written in like pencil above it is Spy Superb, but at what? And then you get cost.
Yeah.
Right. So we open this issue with a part of a backup story, and now it's Lucky's backup story.
Right.
And what we learned is she learned how to calculate all the odds and always know the best escape route from a very young age. Apparently she had an insecurity. She always wanted to know, how can I get out of any situation? And that's going to come into play now. So we go back to the present, and we pick up where we left off in the main story of the last issue with this hotel fight. And so now Lucky and Rochambeau are going to fight while Jay stands there dumbfounded.
Yeah, you've got a 2-page, what do you call those again?
The double-page
The
spread.
double-page spread where you've got this standoff in the hallway between Lucky and Rochambeau, and you've got the reader gets to see all these different options that Lucky is in her mind considering for escape routes, right? She could either go down these sets of stairs or go through these doors or go back into the room or attack head on, right? These are the options she's considering.
Sure. Yeah, perfect. So we get back into the fight, and Rochambeau tells Lucky he doesn't want to fight her. He knows the threat that she poses. He says, I'm just here to kill the Spy Superb. And once the fight starts, Rochambeau can't believe that Jay is the Spy Superb. He says, if this imbecile was the Spy Superb, he would have been dead long ago. And of course, Jay is, hey, I'm standing right here. Meanwhile, Lucky is figuring out how to escape out of this situation. The fight has gone from the hallway back into the hotel room. And she pulls a sheet off the bed, and she's using it to like a whip, and she's using it to take out these other thugs, the henchmen that are with Rochambeau. And she cracks one of them in the eye with the corner of the sheet, and then she's going to use it to
choke him out, right?
to choke one guy out, and then to escape out the window.
That's right. That guy she's trying to choke out also gets like one of the half of a scissors right in his forehead, right? So Rochambeau's throwing little pieces of scissors, and she's blocking him with the forehead of one of his own agents, right? And then she's going to use that sheet to dangle out of the window and then flip to the next balcony.
Yep. So they finally make their escape, and so Rochambeau at this point, he starts thinking that maybe Lucky is the Spy Superb, because there's no way it can be Jay. And so the next scene we've got Lucky and Jay. They've escaped, and they get on a train, and they're taking this train out of town. They're sitting in a dining car on the train, and they're having this conversation. And Lucky is, at this point, giving Jay the download of who Rochambeau is, with his customized weapons and all this kind of thing. And this is really where Jay puts into words his sleeper agent theory. That's really who he is. And don't worry, you may be trained, but you're safe with me because I'm Matt Bourne here. Not Matt
Jason Bourne.
So Chad, Matt Bourne is he's deceased now, but he was a professional wrestler.
Of course he was. Of course he was.
And if you remember the character from about 94, Doink the Clown.
Nope.
Oh, you're kidding me. You don't remember the evil clown from the WWF in the mid-90s?
I do not remember Doink the Clown.
Doink the Clown was played by Matt Bourne, who had been a serious wrestler.
Yikes.
Anyway, this is his Jason Bourne kind of theory that he's laying out here. All right. So while all this is going on, and part of Jay's theory as well is that the government has been doing this his whole life, building up these skills for him. He says, they're toughening me up with a string of relentless failures.
Yes.
Once again, we've got the explanation for why he is where he is in life. Lucky's like hitting him with these truth bombs at this point, and
major. And I wrote down that she has one like really long speech where she's finally just gonna give it to him as it is. Right. This is what you need to hear. You need to hear the truth. And this is from Lucky. Your failures are your own. You are where you are because you're a bit of a jerk. You're self-obsessed, myopic, a pseudo-intellectual that has made bad decisions on unfounded confidence in skills you don't possess. Nailed it.
Yeah, nail on the head, right?
Nailed it. Exactly right. It's hilarious. And if he caught even one word of that, what?
That's right. And at this point, actually, there is a moment of revelation here. So there was this one very odd scene, and we go all the way back to the first issue where Jay is having this conversation with his friend in the coffee shop.
Right.
And in the middle of this discussion about Jay's novel that he's writing, the friend goes, "Have you talked to your brother lately?" And he's like, "I text him every day, but I think he's ghosting me. I don't know where this guy is." But he's like a little miffed by the question. We don't get any more. It's so weird out of context there. So Jay starts, protesting to what Lucky has just said, all these horrible things. And he tells her that she's just jealous, like my brother, who's ghosted me because he felt inferior by comparison
Right.
whenever he's around me. That's when Lucky has some revelations on top of this that she's going to give.
Yeah. You're pretending your brother isn't ignoring you, right? She's starting to, you get this wide-eye moment that she understands now. I guess and you have this like picture there with the trunk that's open with the dead body in there.
This was our very opening scene on the first pages of issue 1, where we saw the trunk of the guy who had rented the car, and it's open and there's the dead body. This is Jay's brother.
He wasn't ghosting him after all. He's dead in the trunk.
That's why he's not. That's why he's not returning the texts. But so this is where we learn that the prior spy superb whose place Jay has taken is his brother.
That's right. Are we supposed to think that Lucky killed him then?
At this point, we don't know. We just see the body here. But Lucky has this information somehow.
Right. Yeah.
And so in just a few
remember.
pages, we're going to have some reveal on that.
That's right. Okay.
But in the meantime, we see that Rochambeau is on the train.
That's right.
And he's making his way down, and he's got one of these poison-tipped throwing stars. And he's preparing to throw that star. And then Lucky spots Rochambeau, and that's when she jumps up out of her seat. The ninja star hits and kills a waiter in the dining car. And so we've got another casualty of this farce. And then Jay and Lucky escape out of the window of the train using Lucky's escape skills once again. But they've jumped out of a moving train, and they're in the desert.
Hers with a little more finesse, right? Of course, Jay's.
Yeah, of course. He's not exactly landing in that like Black Widow superhero pose, right?
Yeah.
So he picks himself up, and they start making their way across this desert area. And
They're using his superb survivor skills,
That's right.
Which he says he spent his childhood reading survival books. My favorite genre. Couldn't help it. Hatchet, Island of the Blue Dolphins, Julie of the Wolves, My Side of the Mountain. Classic survival books where you learn all the tools of the trade.
if ever.
Island of the Blue Dolphins. It's so good.
So the next scene we see them. It's nighttime. They're out in the middle of the desert, and they've made a little campfire basically. And Jay has got a stick with a can on it, and he's boiling some water. And apparently he's gathered some mushrooms that he found around, and he's roasting these mushrooms, and they're talking. And he's just about to start eating, which I love this. Lucky has sat there and watched him cook these mushrooms.
Right.
And Jay is just about to pop the first one in his mouth, talking about his survival skills. And Lucky's, those are poison.
Yeah, don't eat those. Those are poison.
And so he drops them down on the ground, and of course he thinks someone planted poisonous mushrooms out here to take out the spy superb. But at this point they have a real moment, and Jay is like, this is the first time I feel a little sympathy for him, because he's such an obnoxious character that you're like, you know what, let him get on this adventure and get made a fool of the whole way. But he has this kind of tender moment where he's like, why do you know what happened to my brother?
Yeah, right.
When he's talking to Lucky. And why do you know that my brother is dead? And we see in flashback, because Lucky killed him.
That's where it was. Yeah, that's right. That's right. It was so short. It's just a small little kind of aside to the thing where it kind of shows him choking him out, asking him where the kind of the drop was, and then loading his body in the trunk. And
That's right.
Yeah. I saw him get killed is what she says. She says she doesn't admit to it. She's remembering and then just telling him that she saw him get killed.
Yeah, and in part, they have to work together. But also in part, it does feel like she has developed some, not romantic, just like some affection or maybe some pity for Jay.
Yeah.
And she can't bring herself to tell him that this was me.
Yeah, she feels responsible for him, I think, in some ways. Right? Maybe some regret on that she's caused something that she did has after effects to a relationship that now she's a part of.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so the next thing that we get is Jay has got some questions for Lucky now. So you were there, you're a spy, who, not this damsel in distress. Who do you work for? And of course, we think it's the Chinese, because we saw the Chinese, meeting with her, telling her what to do.
And we know the Russians hired Rochambeau.
That's right.
So it knocks them out.
But Lucky's answer is everyone.
Everybody.
I work for everyone. She explains that she works for Chinese intelligence, but she also works for Half Hewitt. Half Hewitt is the name of this secret organization that runs the Spy Superb program. I hadn't really brought this up because I don't quite know what to make of it. Hewitt is and that's probably not how it's pronounced, but it's the French word for 8. And when I did some Googling on Half Hewitt, so I was like, does that mean 4? But the results I was getting was 8.5. And apparently there's a famous Italian film called 8.5, but I read just a short description of it. Didn't seem to me like it connected. So there's something that I have missed.
Yeah.
And I guess it's going to be an unsolved mystery.
I like those little things, right? That's figuring those out.
I do too. But she explains that, so in addition to working for the Chinese, she also works for the organization that runs the Spy Superb program.
Right.
At some point, she explains that she's a triple agent. And she says, real spies like me work on the fringes. That's when Jay is having another realization moment. And it's almost unbelievable that he hasn't had this realization moment yet. But he finally understands that real spies like her recruit and deploy dupes like his brother, like him.
Yeah.
And so now he's got to rethink his whole situation. And so this is where Lucky actually gives an explanation that clears up that the
phone mess
plot hole crisis that I was struggling with. It has a perfectly logical explanation, like all good farce stories.
That's right. She was working for 2 people at once.
That's right. So Lucky says that she was supposed to swap the phones and get Jay's and kill the Spy Superb, and we're going to presume those were the Chinese orders. But she was also working on behalf of Half Hewitt, the American and French, organization, to clean up the mess that they had made by recovering the phone to protect the Spy Superb program. So she was supposed to get Jay's phone, and so she had to do that kind of switch. But then she needed, even though she now had the information, she had to probably get her own phone back, and she had to follow Jay.
So are we thinking that Jay's phone had the names on it?
I think that's right. So here's what I think.
But the names were on Long's phone, right? Wasn't that the whole thing? Is that he looks at Long's picture and it has, why are all these names on here or whatever?
Oh, that's right. Okay, so here's what it is. It was late at night the other night, and I was rereading this, and I was like, I got it now. And of course, I'd lost it within the couple of days since then. That's right. Lucky did a switch of the phones. She had to, Half Hewitter and the handler had put Jay into position by putting a virus on his phone, which brings him into the phone shop.
Okay.
She's going to make a switch there and put the phone with the data into Jay's hands. And that way, the useful idiot has got that information now. And then whatever the next step is down the road.
Because if she walks out with it, then the Russians are watching where that phone goes.
That's exactly right, yeah. And in fact, and this is completing your mission by not knowing that you're on a mission.
Right.
He gets the data and recovers it. She now has to basically protect him from the Russians or whoever else and protect that phone, but she can't be the one carrying it because she has to look like a Chinese agent.
Right.
Okay, so that's where we are. And she also reveals that her latest order is that she is supposed to kill Jay. And he's like, if you're supposed to kill me, why did you stop me from eating those mushrooms?
Yeah.
And she says, I'm not going to kill you after all. Well, Rochambeau is hot on the trail at this point. He's gotten off the train and he's tracking him through the desert.
Yep, they've left their campsite where they've had this nice conversation, and Rochambeau kind of is following them and finds the remnants of their little chat, including a can of some possible food.
That's right, and some possible food, and he's like thirsty.
Yeah,
and of course it had been cooked in water. And so he finds that there's some water in the bottom of this can, and he drinks it.
That's right.
And poor Rochambeau, he's been poisoned. Now he's dazed and silly from drinking this poison. And while this is going on, Lucky and Jay are having a conversation back where they are about all the assumptions that different people have made. And essentially, playing on people's assumptions is what the Spy Superb program is all about.
That's right.
And it gets really meta in a fun way because you realize that's also how this book has played out, by playing on your assumptions. And then he goes on to even call the narrative that they're in. If this were a story, it'd be called The Spy Superb.
Yeah. Nailed it.
Which is, got it. So they get to this like safari park. And I wrote the word gondola in my notes. I don't know if that would be the correct word or not, but it's one of those like high wire, you can ride the thing. Wouldn't that be a gondola?
Yeah, I think that's right.
That you could ride across the safari park to see all the animals and stuff. But they climb and they get on top of it. And they're standing there, and I guess this is going to be part of how they're making their escape. But Rochambeau climbs on top of it as well.
He's back.
And
Yep.
we've got a fight.
That's right.
So do you want to talk us through this fight a little bit?
Yeah, immediately when Rochambeau's on the scene or whatever, these cars are passing from different directions, and so they make this huge jump across the tram to the waiting car. Rochambeau also makes this jump, and then they're fighting. There's a whole physical thing. Jay's even getting involved. Jay has somewhere along the line lost one of the lenses of his sunglasses, which just makes it so great. If he needed anything else to make him look more worthless, this is not helping. He gets a scissors in the arm along the way. Jay does. So one of these little
he's wounded in action.
half scissors is there, and then right before he's about to get a paper from Rochambeau, Lucky saves the day and shoves Rochambeau to the side. Jay ducks, and Rochambeau falls to what we can't count this dude out.
I suppose not. I put in my notes that he plummets to his death, but you're absolutely right. Who knows?
Man.
Maybe there'll be a Rochambeau spin-off series.
I've been fooled already 3 or 4 times in this book.
Yeah, that's right. And you think of that schoolyard mean trick that kids will play on each other where 2 people are standing there talking and one gets down on his hands and knees and the other one pushes the person over the back. And that's how this guy ends up falling off the gondola, except that Jay is not there because he's trying to participate. He's there because he's been like wounded.
And when it cuts back to Jay, he's got a great picture of him kneeling down after he just was instrumental in his death, Rochambeau's death, and has a scissors sticking out of his side of his arm as well as one in his gut. There's blood all over the place, right? And they're about to just have this kind of last conversation, he and Lucky.
That's right. And Lucky at this point, I don't know if she's got a communicator of some kind, but she communicates to someone the job is finished.
That's right. Should I finish the job? Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Oh, that's it. Not she doesn't communicate the job is finished. They communicate to her, finish the job, which the job being, of course, kill Jay at this point. But she doesn't.
Nope.
Because we turn the page and we're in a new scene now. We're in Paris.
That's right. We've got the Eiffel Tower here. We're right in front of the Louvre, and Lucky is sitting out there in kind of in front of a fountain area with some sunglasses. There just happens to be a guy sitting to her left that has an orange shirt, which is Jay's calling card. That looks to be, it is Jay Bartholomew with a new pair of sunglasses we can only expect.
Of course. And she's there to meet somebody, the handler.
That's right.
So the handler comes walking up to her, and she tells him, look, I know that your plan, handler, was to kill me after I killed Jay. And in fact, that was even revealed to the people in that shadowy cabal at the very beginning, that whatever agent we put on to take out the Spy Superb, they'll be a liability because they'll know we'll have to take them out afterward. She's figured that out.
Right.
And so she gets off, she, at this point, says, that's not how it's going to go. Here's what we're going to do instead. Handler, you and Half Hewitt, this program, are going to use me and Jay as a team to carry out these missions like kill Rochambeau. And he's like, yeah, okay, we can do that. So we get a little afterward after that.
Yes.
And we see them. Jay is walking through the streets looking at his most I'm a spy like. And there's a spy that's actually following him.
Right.
And of course, Lucky is lurking in the shadows behind. She kills the spy that's following him. And that's our Spy Superb. But then they're having dinner after they've carried out this mission, Jay and Lucky. And Jay is talking about the next play that he's going to write. I guess he's moved off the novel idea for the moment. He's going to write a play, and it's going to be based on all of their adventures. And, Lucky tells him that spycraft is all about pretending that you're something that you're not. Keep pretending. Play your role. Successful writer, master of espionage. You're none of those things. But what makes that's what makes you the perfect idiot.
That's right. End scene.
Yeah, end scene and end book, except for a little bit of back matter that we get following that.
It's true.
So we've got a page, and it's a page out of presumably Jay's novel. And I read the page. It is absolute drivel.
Yeah. You can't understand hardly any of what this is, right?
No. And then we get our final backstory, and that is the backstory of Lucky being recruited by the Handler.
That's right, with the Hewitt. And you also get this wide shot of Lucky Long herself. So just like you had at the very beginning of the book, you've got Jay Bartholomew with all of his kind of what are his weapons, or what is he carrying with him, and then Rochambeau. Lucky gets hers too, with where she stores all of her weapons or devices for assassinating. Audio recording, a brooch. She's got a poison fingernail, right? She's got an explosive pen, a gun with suppressor, digital telescope, throwing knives. She's loaded.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the conclusion to our story, which was so satisfying.
Yeah.
I loved every bit of this. And Chad, it sounds to me like you did too.
I totally did. I enjoyed all of it. Probably even just spend more time on it. Maybe this is just true with comic books in general, but there's a tendency to want to linger a little bit, that you can move through real fast and just read all the bubbles or whatever. But like looking for the detail on kind of the things that they're showing you or hiding you or revealing to you in certain kind of time frame. I love that it's like the patience of it, which is nice.
So many I spend a lot of hours every week listening to podcasts that are reviewing different comics and that kind of thing. And it's usually we're reviewing the comics that came out this week. And most comic books have a once a month release schedule. Sometimes it's a little longer, and sometimes it's like, I think Spider-Man usually comes out like every 2 weeks, or, there are certain books that will do that. And for the books, at least the ones that I buy in physical copy, I will go back like the night before the new book's release and reread the issue from last month, because so many of the people that I listen to are like, I just really couldn't remember very well what had happened in the last issue. And it almost as if that was a failure of the storytelling. And to me, I've got another opportunity to enjoy this thing.
Yeah.
Read it a second time, see where it follows through. But it's a very different experience than reading the graphic novel when it's all collected later on.
Yeah.
Where you can do that in two sittings.
It did feel that way. It did seem like a book that way, and the chapters stand alone on their own. And I definitely went back. Just even though I read it a couple weeks ago, like coming back even just like yesterday and just want to refamiliarize yourself with some of those things just made me linger on some of those pictures and storylines even more.
Yeah. So one other thing that you often get when they're collected that makes it something additional to what you could have gotten with the single issues, aside from the fact that it's much easier to make it look pretty on a shelf,
yeah,
which it does. But you usually get what's referred to as the back matter. And so here we've got a ticket stub from the Skyrail Rainforest Cableway, which was where the animal preserve was that they were on. And you've got a sketch gallery toward the back.
That's right.
The artist's initial designs for the character, which I think is really cool. But then the other thing you get is a cover gallery, and this is pretty standard in a collected edition.
Okay.
Like this. A lot of comics are released where the cover that is on the individual issues I have will be called the A cover, and then they'll have what are called variant covers, where it could be an additional cover by the same artist. A lot of time it's by a different artist who just comes in to do a cover and just make a cool-looking, different take on the character. And so we've got a handful of these from some other artists, and some of them are really cool.
Yeah. My favorite one is the one where Jay's just in the middle of this crowd, and he's reading a travel guide, and you've got all these different people that are really close to him around.
So which one is that?
This is Spy Superb #2, cover by Matt Kindt.
Okay, so this was, in fact, if I go back to the single issue here,
Was it actually in there?
Cover.
Oh, it was in there. Okay, it was used.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't remember that being on there.
I mean, it might not have been included in the graphic novel at that point.
So he's surrounded by all these other would-be assassins, people that we recognize, like Rochambeau is there, and some of the guys from the Repairmen are around him, right? So he's completely absent-minded, and all these people around him who likely are trying to kill him are just inches away.
That's right. But of course, he'll probably end up killing them all by accident.
Something will happen. That's right.
So just to wrap up, I want to thank you again so much for coming on this. Tell me this. Have I made my first graphic novel decide?
Let me see how I'm going to play on this. I don't know if I want to be completely going into it right away, but I would definitely read another one for sure.
Cool.
I wasn't turned off by it at all, and it'd be something where I don't know where I would go. I probably would need a guide. I would probably need someone to show me the way to what my next one would be. But yeah, this could be a gateway book. I mean, to something.
I don't have a high expectation that all of my friends are going to be with me on Wednesdays in the comic shop. Wednesdays are when new issues are released.
Okay.
Now, DC Comics releases theirs on Tuesday, but the traditional day is Wednesday, and in a few months they're going back to Wednesdays too.
So you leave our lunch every week and then are going to find out what the new release is that
Well, I already know what the new
Okay,
release.
you're waiting on it.
Yeah. So, Chad, Wednesday is the best day of my week. Let me tell you, there is a podcast called Comic Book Club that does a specific one called The Stack that releases at 9 o'clock on Wednesday mornings, or at least 9 o'clock Central. I don't know where it does anywhere place else. But they go through and they talk in very short form about like 30 different issues that are going to be released on the stands that day. Now, I've already got the ones picked out, and actually they have them waiting for me at the shop that evening when I get off of work.
Wow.
But I'm listening to that. Some of the times it's like, hey, I'm getting a little preview of what I'm going to see.
Yep.
Other times, though, it's, oh, they talked about this other book that really sounds cool, and maybe I'll pick up an issue of it if they have it on the shelf at my shop. But I listen to that while I'm driving to our lunch with all of our buddies.
Okay.
I listen to it while I'm driving back, and then once the work day lets out, my first stop is at our comic book shop. And I'm listening on the way there, and then I get to go home at night, and I've got my new
That's why you come in so jazzed. You're coming in just on high up mark.
Believe it or not, it's not just to be around you guys, although that is a wonderful benefit.
So good.
I'll tell you what, you will read at least one more comic because we're absolutely going to have you back.
Great. I'd love to.
Thank you very much. I want you to. Last thing, I gave you a little homework assignment. And did you remember to do it?
I did. Is this the Instagram thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you want to know an Instagram, what do they call it? A handle or address?
Yeah, an account or whatever.
Account that I follow. So there are a few that I was thinking between. I'm not like a huge Instagram follower. I do it just enough to keep up with my kids' pictures and those kind of things. But one that is a sleeper one that's funny for me, I'm a huge Seinfeld fan. And there's an account called Seinfeld 2000 that has just basically memes that have Seinfeld episodes or just little kind of tidbits of things brought into a modernized world, right? What would maybe Seinfeld or George say about something going on recently? What if George was the one that was dating Taylor Swift right now? Like, what would that going to be? Or you got like the Pope who wore like this big puffer jacket, right? Which is like this callback from one of the episodes. There's just so many funny things. One of them which was recent from a Dune episode, the most recent one, has a photo of the Queen from Dune who says, use the voice, right? And it has a picture of Jerry going, hello. Right. So just wonderful little tidbit, just callbacks of Seinfeld, which I really like.
Well, I will take that recommendation. So I asked you that in part because I'm pretty new to Instagram as well. But so right now, my feed on Instagram is like tuned to just bring joy. And that's why I want to ask my guests on there to give me something to add.
Yeah.
Right now, I've got creators of comics, but also all kinds of art, musicians that I wouldn't have heard of, but the algorithm recommended to me. Yeah. And so I've got one I want to recommend as well today. And maybe some people will have heard of this guy, but the handle is at Deyaz, D-E-Y-A-Z. And this guy is a young singer and guitar player and just phenomenal. So particularly what I would recommend to folks is, Chad, do you remember this song from about 10 years ago called Home by Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros?
Oh, I don't know that version, no.
Oh, so this is the one that started out, Alabama, Arkansas, I sure love my mom.
Yeah.
So Home was the title of that song.
Oh, okay.
And that was a really everybody jumping around, sing-songy type song. He plays this stripped down, acoustic, quiet version of it, and it is gorgeous.
Okay.
And so maybe some of the listeners can enjoy something from that too.
That's so great.
Anyway, everybody, if you are still with us, and I hope so, you are. I hope at least my mom is still with us. My dad said he wasn't sure that he would commit to listening. He'd at least give it a try. I bet he doesn't give it a 2-hour try.
If you need an easy way to help close us out, I do have one final quote from our hero, the spy superb.
You're going to close us in prayer, aren't you?
No, I'm not.
You're not going to give us
Man, I'm blessing no Jay's theology.
Well, okay, please, a final quote, and then I'll thank all of our listeners for being here. Thank you to Travell. Thank you to Chad. And thank you to everyone who's out there still listening. So, Chad, take us out.
So one of the callbacks from Jay's talking with his brother, a conversation they had in a flashback that you have. Jay says, "Greatness is the enemy of the mediocre." And his brother says, "No, Jay, perfection is the enemy of the good." Isn't that good?
There you go.
That'll preach.
That'll preach. Wisdom of the ages. Thank you guys so much.